Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, the history of things is important. And when you're getting them for free, that's even better. But if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am your host for this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains about current projects, what got them into the business, state of the industry, and all sorts of fun things under the sun. And if you'd like to listen to this podcast or other podcasts in our ever-growing series, don't hesitate to subscribe to us either over on Apple Podcasts, over on Spotify, or you can find everything archived over at our YouTube channel. Also, we'd love it if you'd follow us over on the social media, either at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at either In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all the latest updates. And finally, and I think most importantly, please give us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, where our hardworking team is pumping out a myriad of reviews and news and lists and all sorts of fun stuff about film from all over the globe. And that's what we're going to talk about today, a little bit of film. But it's film on TV because it's our friends over at Hollywood Suite who are not only kicking off their free preview month with all sorts of fun stuff, but they're also creating their own content, which I think is really a fascinating thing with a series that they have called A Year in Film, where they pick a year, obviously, and then they sort of break down a lot of the films that came out that year. Some of the important ones, some of the blockbuster ones, but also the occasional obscure one and the occasional fun one as well. And right now we're going to talk with Cameron Maitland, who is he's one of the higher-ups at Hollywood Suite, and as even he says, I think his job title is made up, so I will let him have his made up job title. But he works in content programming, he works in content development, he works in curation, he works in programming. He really is sort of an interesting guy to talk to, and he is one of the major influences behind their new series, A Year in Film. And as they kick into their second season, which is premiering this December 6th, as they look at the year 1975, we talked to him about sort of the genesis of the series and the channel creating their own content, and so very much more as we try to keep the film community alive and keep interesting stuff going alive. And I think they're doing lots of that over at Hollywood Suite. And so enjoy our talk with Cameron, and that's it. All right. Well, obviously, first off, thanks for coming on. And I just want to say congratulations on, I guess, season 2, we're going to call it.
Yes, it is. It's kind of weird when seasons are 4 episodes, but it is season 2, yes.
Now, what kicked all this off? Because, I mean, one thing I love about you guys over there at Hollywood Suite is, like, you're starting to sort of branch out, and you're not just programming, but you're creating. And, I mean, what was sort of the impetus to sort of really kick that off?
Well, I guess one thing we've always done, because we're an ad-free movie channel, I mean, we don't break into the movies with ads.
Right.
We have always kind of sought content to fill between movies,
Yeah.
kind of trying to create original content to fill the 5-10 minutes, just to make sure our movies aren't starting at 9:47.
Yeah.
Exactly. A round number tends to make programming a lot easier. So for a while we were doing these film facts, which were just short little edited pieces, and doing research, kind of making these up, and then also finding other various little things. We did interviews called On Film, where we had an expert talk about a movie, and we also did spotlights where we're trying to talk about actors or directors or craftspeople, and highlight their career. So it was kind of an interest in expanding those concepts and knowing that we were kind of building this roster of film experts. But then also, I think we really love, obviously, we're a classic movie channel. We love nostalgia. And we also had this interest in kind of the film ephemera, the promotional stuff that has been lost along with some of these movies. So I think that was really the impetus, was like, can we make this kind of content, but also supplement it with stuff like old press junkets, old advertisements, just kind of give the feel of those eras.
Well, and that's it, right? Because I mean, if it's too talking head, then it'll just be a little too dry and a little too dull. You need to be able to sort of have it sort of go at a fast pace, right?
Yeah, totally. And just find a way to kind of bring these movies back to life and also get people excited for these movies again.
Is part of the fun of putting something like this together even finding those old press clips? Because I've got to imagine you had to do some serious digging to be able to put all this stuff together.
Oh yeah, totally. Alicia Fletcher, who you see on the series, is also our archival producer, and she's a visual researcher. So she kind of has a hand in this. She's understood how to find these archives, these kind of interesting things, and it is very fascinating. There are these archives of old reviewers who just managed to maintain all the rights to their own content, and now they sell it. Or we use old Linehan clips from Canada because his archive is available. It's very fun and interesting, and I love, for instance, in season 2 we dug up audience reactions coming out of The Fly, which is like amazing to me. That's like the kind of thing where I'm used to seeing that for like Paranormal Activity, but you don't. And I think it was just local news asking people what they thought of The Fly as they came out, and it's just as charming in 1986 as it is today.
Is that how you sort of whittle it down? Because I mean, I've got to imagine, especially when you're sort of initially assembling them, there's tons of stuff you want to talk about, but then it's gonna, once the process develops and it's like, oh well, we don't have as much material for this, but we got too much for that. And how do you sort of balance all that out?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. This year, we've been lucky because we kind of, every year we learn a little more on how to strategize. And this year, a lot of the times when we had maybe just one expert talking very clearly about a film, we've turned that into an on film or a spotlight about that particular film. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of a mix of, we want a lot of diverse voices on a specific film. Like, it's kind of boring just to hear the same person talk, myself included. And so we want a few different people talking about a film. And we also, that supplemental material. So, if we find something amazing, we kind of just have to hope that we can also get people talking interestingly, having kind of a hot take on the film. And then it also comes down to just, the business of film. This is licensing. This is dealing with a lot of different companies, which is, again, Alicia's specialty. So trying to make sure that we can get and show these clips and add them and just get high quality versions of these clips. I mean, a lot of great archival stuff is wonderful, but it can't really broadcast on TV that well. It'll just look crummy. So it's kind of a real alchemy that can be a little frustrating, but it helps you narrow it down, and the show actually comes together fairly nicely.
Yeah, old 2-inch video doesn't age very well, does it?
No, and you can only really do so many like graphics to make it just the corner of the screen before it feels like you're pushing it.
I mean, that's something else about these shows that I've kind of really enjoyed, because on one end, while there is a very sort of broad Coles Notesy focus for the general audience, it does get a little specific, and it doesn't get a little new movie specific as well. Because I mean, there were a couple of moments in some of the episodes that stood out to me. Because on one end, I love how you drew attention to sort of the Chinese language cinema that was coming out in the 2000 episode with Yi and Mood for Love and Crouching Tiger. But then also, I think in one of the other episodes, I think it was the 94 one, I was like, my God, they did 3 minutes on Clifford. Like, how do you sort of curate this? How do you sort of manage the curation of it all?
Well, I think partially it's just what people glom onto. I know in season 1 we had quite a big chunk on the movie Munchie, which is just a bizarre children's film, but that enough of our experts remembered and had a kind of a relationship with. It's tough. I think we always want to have some fun ones, some kind of goofy, forgotten ones that might tickle people's nostalgia. We also try to go out of our way to highlight women filmmakers and filmmakers of color who might, especially in the past, who might have been a little overlooked, just to allow people to kind of experience a film they may not have. But yeah, I think we also try to just have fun at least once an episode again, because it can get a little dry. So we do spend as much time looking at like what were the bombs of that year, what were the movies that might have, especially in the 90s, the direct-to-video stuff. I mean, that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating because you can look at the top box office, but there's this whole shadow world, especially when you're kind of our age and remembering going into the video store and what you saw lining the shelves. It's a whole different thing. But it also kind of matters to look, especially I think when we were talking about the cinema from all around Asia in 2000, you just kind of look at the lay of the land, and the more you're digging into it, the more these titles come up, and also knowing what our individual experts might respond to. I think we're getting to know them a bit better, so now we can kind of see a movie that's like, oh, I know who will get into this. But I think also it's down to I mean, we have our editors and our director Ryan Maines, and then Alicia too. I mean, she has to spend so much of her time negotiating and talking to these people that I think it's no secret that she's a huge Clifford fan. So maybe she spends a little more time on that. And I also think actually with Clifford, there had recently been a fairly big Clifford screening in Toronto.
That's right. There had been, yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of people had recently seen it on the big screen and gotten excited. And I think that another thing that interested us is, I guess, the director had found out about that screening and been very excited that people were screening it. And it had gotten back to Martin Short, and kind of the two of them are a little baffled that there are fans of Clifford. So it was charming. It kind of felt like a chance to once again underline that, because yeah, those two guys worked really hard on that film, and it's kind of a crazy movie. So I don't know. I remember seeing it all the time on cable, so I did even myself have a little nostalgia for it.
And I mean, and that's one of those things. And I mean, I think this sort of, you can blanket this out to the whole Hollywood suite team, because there's always been a sense of curation when it comes to putting not only these episodes together, but even the programming together. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, what ultimately got you into this business? Because I mean, last night I turned it on because the free preview, and I was like, oh, Die Hard's on one channel, and then it's like, oh, Rashomon's on the other. And I mean, there aren't many sort of organizations who will have that sort of diversity in their programming.
Yeah, it's my way in was completely wild. I mean, my title of the company is film and content specialist, which 100% is just made up by me. My way in was kind of half marketing and content related, half hosting and doing live events and PR like this, and then a bit just social media, things like that. So part of the reason I came in was a chance to kind of highlight that curation. I think to allow us to take some bigger swings by offering a lot of supplemental content, both showing what films are maybe premiering that people might not know on social media, or writing a bit of more of a blog, which now we actually have a lot of various voices kind of writing about these movies, so we can premiere something a bit stranger. I think at the time it might have been when we were starting to show Janus Criterion films on Saturdays.
Right.
So that was kind of an opportunity to both show these classic movies, but also maybe help people out who might be more new to these films. So yeah, it's that's kind of what I do. And the plus side is we are trying to get, even more and more diverse, both from a sense of like, I think a lot of us are genre fans.
Yeah.
So there's weird stuff. We're trying harder to have a unique look at Shocktober, which is big for us. We always have a big Halloween. But I also know, like, especially this year, with a lot of talk of Black Lives Matter, we've really been beefing up our Black directors specifically, to try to just have a better representation there. And I think it's a really unique opportunity. And now I know we all sit down and we kind of look at what's available, what films are coming. You obviously have a budget, but it's fun to kind of talk and figure out what you want, because you want people to watch. You want to make sure you're programming stuff people know, but often there's a lot of opportunities to program something that people might love that they don't yet know. And how often can we do that? I know we had very recently, we just premiered this Canadian film called Snow Walker, It's a Farley Mowat adaptation, I believe.
Yeah.
And I would have thought nothing of it, but we got a lot of great response from people who just are kind of regular viewers who turned it on at 9 p.m. and really loved it. So it's always exciting when we get that sort of response.
How important do you think that kind of curation is going to be going forward? Because I mean, even if you expand this out to like sort of theaters and what they're having to deal with, I mean, there is really in this business, it's starting to get more and more down to curation. It's not necessarily about having 8 of the 12 screens with your one big movie. It's about programming the right movie at the right time, and there are so many different dynamics that come into that, which at least on this side of the business, sort of post COVID, are really starting to be highlighted across the board, which you guys seem to have been focused on for years.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely, and especially in the world of TV,
Yeah.
and especially in Canada, to be honest, because I think it's becoming more and more obvious that there is not going to ever again probably be a service in Canada that has everything you want.
Yeah.
And especially with the fact that the streaming boom happened in the U.S., and it seems that a lot of these options are not interested in coming to Canada. So there is now just this massive, vast amount of content. And especially from a classic and a retro perspective,
Yeah.
there's so much. And honestly, I think also working on A Year in Film has really showed us the amount of films and fairly classic films that are neglected by streaming and by cable, and a lot of films have just fallen out of memory. I mean, neglect is rude. Sometimes it's legal complications. Sometimes it's just I don't
Intentional or
know.
unintentional. It's still
Yeah,
neglect. Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's true. So we, I think, work very hard to try to care about those movies because, yeah, it doesn't have to be something. I mean, I'm trying to think. Oh, we're showing this Frank Tashlin movie, "Girl Can't Help It," which is like a weird James Mansfield cartoon kind of crazy movie. So that's a pretty like out there one, but it can be something quite huge that you would be shocked has not aired anywhere for a long time. So I think that that's very important. I know our current programmers, Sharon Stevens and Suzanne Marshall, they're very interested in both sides of that. But I also think it's just, yeah, there's so many opportunities, which is nice when it comes to curation. And you're right, we have cared about like that kind of narrow casting, kind of trying to create this space that feels very, very specific. We listen to our fans a lot. Honestly, it's like I think it's a thing that people don't necessarily believe, but if you submit to us a request, we truly try our best to try to program it, which is interesting. Like I've got a spreadsheet, it's real. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's so hard to know your fans. That's also like a large part of my job, is trying to reach out, trying to better understand. Yeah, it's exciting though when it connects. Yeah, I mean, talking about Snowwalker, we just this month we're showing Youngblood, the old hockey movie, which again, it's not one I'm nostalgic for at all, but we got somebody very excited, and I guess it was filmed around here. I think it's filmed in Hamilton,
Yeah.
and that the team whose rink they used just retweeted it. So it's like, it's exciting to think that, oh yeah, this is a movie that people are saying apparently has been unavailable on Canadian TV for a while, and they're very excited about watching it again. So it's like, that's such a nice feeling, being able to bring somebody something that they've cared about that's been unavailable to them.
What do you think those golden gooses, especially when it comes to movies, have been sort of pushed to the side a little bit? Because I mean, it does feel from a television broadcasting standpoint that TV has like episodic TV. The golden goose is done. Like they've all been done. There's nothing new to sort of explore. But from a movie standpoint, there's tons of stuff out there, and I'm kind of like, from your perspective, what do you think we sort of that sort of barrier hasn't been broken yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly think a lot of it can be that certain catalogs are acquired by other studios.
Yeah.
And then I think that it's just, again, it's not neglect, but I think it's just like that they have such a big catalog sometimes they don't know what to put forward. I think more and more I'm seeing a bit of rights holders curating, which I think actually will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's great when we have certain distributors say, hey, listen, I think we have this that would work really well for you guys, or they're very excited about a title that they've recently acquired the rights to. But I honestly think it's a lot of that, the shifting landscape, especially from the 90s to the 2000s, where it's just like, there'll be a whole big distributor that gets swallowed up by something else, like something like Miramax, for instance. The rights to those are all over the place. And it can be a little hard tracking it down. And fortunately, again, with our programmers and with Alicia, we have all these people who are very good at that. And I think that that's been a skill that maybe a lot of places have not focused on as hard. Like they don't have the the dog the bounty hunter of film rights, and sometimes
Alicia's going to hear this, So.
Oh, I mean, she'd accept it, and I think Sharon and Susie are exactly the same. But it's like I think that luckily Hollywood Suite and the structure of it has afforded us to have these people who are very passionate. So if somebody requests X movie, we can take time out of our day to try to contact our people and, look through IMDb Pro and kind of, email France or whatever and try to figure out where the heck some of these movies are. Because, you'd be shocked at, something like Dawn of the Dead can be quite hard to program.
Yeah.
Even though it's a massive movie that you think would be such a slam dunk on your channel.
And I mean, there are so many different variables to it for broadcasting rights and for like even physical media rights and theatrical rights. And it's one of those things that people like people on the outside looking in don't necessarily appreciate, because I mean, especially when you look at something like in the physical world, like for physical media, there are so many studios that are bubbling up so many different movies that it's like, oh my God, I forgot this even existed. But then if you want to try to get broadcasting rights for something like that, that's a different beast entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a big part of it. I think, I mean, my whole thing is like, if there's any rights holders listening, my thing would be, it's always worth, no matter how big or small your movie is, to like up-res it to whatever the current broadcasting standard is. Make sure you've got an HD version, and we will now and again help certain films with that. That's not far. So like, if you don't know how to do it, reach out. And I also just think that there is a place for them, because I think the interesting thing is no rights holder doesn't want their movie programmed, obviously.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Like there's a rare occasions where maybe they're trying to remake it or something, but it's kind of fascinating, and the opportunities are really there, and it's an exciting moment because I think a lot more people are realizing that. I think we're really getting towards that, and we're getting a lot of. It's a fascinating world. I mean, the doors are wide open. A lot of international stuff is a lot more easy now to get access to, which is really great. You see a lot of that. For a minute, like a lot of Hong Kong movies were just impossible to get broadcast rights to, and now it's getting a little better. So yeah, I think it's just kind of growing pains, and hopefully soon this more diverse kind of stream will be available. I think people are also realizing that stuff that we do, focusing on kind of movie fans or people searching for that feeling of 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s nostalgia are out there and are curious and interested. And also, I just think you kind of never know, find a popular movie. It might not have been around for a while. People might not have seen it for a while, and it just really hits and connects with people.
Thinking back for you in your life, can you boil it down to one movie that you think probably got you into this business?
Yeah, I kind of have a couple.
Okay.
One of my big ones is The Dark Crystal, weirdly. That was just my childhood
Nice.
one that I was obsessed with
Yeah.
because it's so
Yeah, me too.
so unique and weird and so magical. I think a lot of the films of Jim Henson really meant a lot to me. But also, I think the thing that really put me towards filmmaking and working in it was Nashville, Robert Altman's movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was just such a different, crazy way of storytelling, and you could see all the technical stuff. And again, but it's kind of a fascinating connection to us because I remember just noticing Nashville at the public library in Edmonton because it was, I believe, a double VHS. So it was one of those big fat boxes, and kind of wondering what the heck, because it's got the crazy cover that's like a human microphone in front of an American flag.
Cartoon. Yeah.
So I kind of had no idea what it was, and it really drew me in and fascinated me. And yeah, just knowing, like, even as somebody who didn't yet know a lot about production, it was obviously such a wild undertaking to create that movie that I got very interested in it. And yeah, ever since, I just love learning the facts about stuff. I mean, that's a lot with the TV show and our podcast is like, we go back and we research and just learn about all these little moments surrounding these movies. And that really makes them feel special.
And I mean, it's one of those things because, I mean, I think I'm a little more heightened to it now, just as we sit in our sort of pandemic world waiting for the button to reset. The loss of film community kind of is felt a little more. And I mean, I think what you guys do, not just with the show, but with the programming and everything else you guys do, is to sort of build up that sense of film community and sort of appreciation of that world. And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, like, what do you see Hollywood Suite doing going forward in terms of not necessarily programming, but in terms of the stuff that you're creating? Because I mean, the stuff you did with Ferris Bueller, like you did Ferris Bueller a little while ago, and then you did Night of the Living Dead. And how do you see that sort of universe of you guys creating your own content evolving going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always kind of exploring. We definitely were trying the multimedia stuff, like you said. We have 2 VR projects. We have documentary projects. I mean, coming soon, we work with a lot of Canadian filmmakers, so we're always trying to support Canadian content of all streams. We're, as I say, dipping our toes into podcasting right now. We have a complimentary A Year in Film podcast. So just, being able to kind of talk about this information and use this information without the extra effort of dealing with all the rights holders and trying to do stuff like that, finding a way to supplement our programming in different mediums is very interesting to us. I think we're just going to kind of keep it that. Finding ways to connect with the audience is very important to us. So both, like you say, programming, finding ways to maybe find a niche that we are not fulfilling in our programming, but then also just like literal almost outreach. If you think ways to reach through the internet and connect with people, or through media, is very important to us. So we're kind of trying to explore different aspects of especially the history of film, especially specific productions, and see if we can kind of find a space there. So I think right now podcast is something we're very interested in, and the documentary stuff is something we're still working on.
And you know what? I think that's a good note to end on, because I think you guys are doing a great job with all of it. And if you need a fresh head for season 3, I only live a few. I'm not that far down the street. Give me a call.
Okay, I will definitely pass that on.
All right, thanks again for this, man.